Evening, everybody. So tonight's lesson is what we call an oldie but a goodie. And I have preached this here before. In fact, I can tell you the date that I preached it. It was one of the first ones that I ever preached here. So it was way back in 2014. So about 11 and a half years ago. A lot of you weren't here, at least attending at this congregation. But I was thinking about what I've been thinking about for a few weeks now, which is people coming back and how much. And of course, we had one lesson about how good it would be, how it would benefit the church and the congregation here if people who were once faithful came back and started being faithful. And it would be good for obviously good for them, but good for all of us. And I was thinking, you know what? Maybe some of those who are lost and who've fallen away, maybe there's some of these people we're going to talk about tonight. And if you haven't heard this from me, you may have heard it from another preacher. I don't know how well known this lesson is, but I know where and who I heard it from first, and it really left an impression on me, and I can almost remember hearing it as it was preached. And so maybe if you've never heard this kind of lesson, then maybe it'll leave the same kind of impression upon you. So I have said this before that I'm kind of fascinated with, especially in the Old Testament. You're reading through the Old Testament and you come across a chapter or even just like a little small section of verses that describes this event or some person or whatever, and it seems to kind of show up out of nowhere, and then it just fades into nothing. And those kind of passages really, I feel like there's so many good lessons in those tiny little sections of Scripture. And I tend to think that 2 Samuel 23, and we could go ahead and turn over there, 2 Samuel 23. I think this account of David's mighty men, 2 Samuel 23, is one of those little sections that gives us a whole lot that we might not have seen at first. Now, the chapter, 2 Samuel 23, it starts with recording King David's very last words. Probably not the very last words that he ever spoke, probably his last public words. That's what we have there. And if we were to keep on going, just over in 1 Kings, the very next book, chapter 2, David dies. So he dies 2 months later after speaking these words in 2 Samuel 23. But what follows his words is an account of a very special group of men who fought for David. Now, unless you know this particular chapter or this book of the Bible very well, you're not going to recognize any of the names that we're going to say. These are all names that are one of those like, oh, I really don't want to read that. Don't call on me to read those scriptures. They're kind of those big names, that they're tongue twisters. These men are not the kind of men that have their likeness, whatever they may have looked like, hanging in the kids' classrooms or Bible classes. We don't talk about these much in adult classes or ever. People don't name their babies after these men. You're not going to find them quoted, in the New Testament as some kind of outstanding example for us to learn from. But that doesn't make them any less important than any of the other people that are in the Bible. Now, as great as David was, and he was great, he was a great king, and he had his faults, but he lived faithfully to God, and he died faithfully. He didn't win all of his battles alone. Even when he fought Goliath, who did David have with him? He had God with him. Yes, that's the answer. And as king, David had help. He had certain men defending him, and he had certain men who were helping Israel conquer her enemies. Now, I don't have to tell you that great things are usually never done by a single individual. David, as king, he had his help. And what we see in this account is a group of people working under the leadership of a king to gain success. And since the church is a group of people working under the leadership of the King of Kings to have success in this world, then you got to think, all right, there's definitely something here for us to learn. No one person in any given congregation should expect to or be expected to single-handedly get the Lord's work accomplished. This is probably one of the gross misunderstandings of the role of a preacher, perhaps, that the preacher is supposed to do everything because he's the guy that we pay. And there is some argument for that the preacher better be doing what he should be doing. But no one person could possibly be expected to right all the wrongs, to do all the work, to get the church on the right track and convert the entire world, right? It takes everybody. And so if the church is going to grow and survive and do the work of the Lord effectively until he returns, the body of Christ is going to need certain people. And so we're going to make some connections between the kind of members of the church that the church needs today and some of these men that are listed in this chapter. So the first one, we're going to hop down to verse number 8. Chapter 23, verse 8 says, "These are the names of the mighty men whom David had: Josheb Basabeth, the Tachmonite, chief among the captains. He was called Adino the Eznite because he had killed 800 men at one time." All right, that's really all you get to know about this guy, but I think it's enough. So he killed hundreds of men all at once. And so we could say that this man was a very great warrior who had a whole lot of courage. Now, the King James, there's a second account of this chapter. It's in 1 Chronicles chapter 11. And when you read in the King James, he said he lifted up his spear. And so he had killed 800 men at one time with a spear. So wouldn't it be safe to say that this man accomplished a lot with very little? Yeah. Imagine having to do battle with just one person with a spear. Imagine 5 people. You had to fight them with a spear. Your life was on the line. You had to fight 10 people and all you got is a spear. And this guy fought against 800 with a spear. Most of us, have any of y'all even held a spear before in your life? Maybe you have. Have you ever swung it around? Have you ever thrown a spear? Probably not. This is very similar to the judge Shamgar. He's not talked about very much at all in the Bible or from the pulpit. As Judges chapter 3, Shamgar, it says he killed 600 men of the Philistines with an ox goad. So basically, he took a big old farming tool and just went at it and fought for the Lord. And he had great success. Adino here is kind of the same thing. The church needs people who are able to accomplish a whole lot just with what they have. And we're not talking about not just accomplish certain things that are great, or we might think, well, nobody can do that. It's just, we're talking about people who will just put all that they have into what they do. That's it. So doesn't the Lord deserve our very best? Doesn't he deserve our very best in all aspects of our service to him? Doesn't he deserve our very best in worship and outside of worship? And wouldn't that include our very best in bringing souls to Jesus Christ? I know that there's so many Christians who wouldn't dare. They would not even think of missing a worship service. They're going to be here when the doors are open, and there's many Christians who would not dare eat a meal without saying a prayer to God first. But I think a lot of those same Christians would do just about anything to avoid having to open the Bible with somebody. Why is that? Why do we run away from that? That is one of the strangest things that I have ever seen in my life. If I was that way, purposely avoiding talking to people about the Bible or opening up the scriptures to them, whether I was scared or not, it doesn't matter. How could I stand before God and say, Lord, I've given you my all? How could you do it? You know, the background of the 12 apostles wasn't much to write home about. Who were the apostles but fishermen, tent makers, tax collectors who were not well liked at all, but they're just pretty plain old fellas. In Acts 4, in verse 13, the Jewish leaders, after hearing Peter talk about Jesus, they marveled because they perceived that Peter and the other apostles, they were uneducated and untrained men. Like, how in the world are these fellas doing this? We know who these guys are, and they're not supposed to be this smart. But here they were speaking wisdom and things that made sense, and they were not afraid whatsoever to do it. And so these common men, these apostles, they ended up spreading the gospel to the entire known world. Romans chapter 10 and verse 18. In Matthew 25, starting in verse 14, Jesus tells the parable of the talents. So we have the 5-talent man, right? The 2-talent man and the 1-talent man. Did the 2-talent man, do you remember, did he do anything wrong? Did the 2-talent man, you had the 1 and the 2 and the 5, did the 2-talent man do anything wrong? No, he didn't. He didn't do anything wrong. In fact, the 2-talent man doubled what he was given. And someone might come along and say, well, yeah, but he didn't have the 5 talents like the first guy did. He didn't have that. So what? So what? The fact that he received less than somebody else he did not let that discourage him. Now, so there's some people today, I suppose, when they know what everybody's got, and whatever that might mean, and they're like, well, I don't have as much. They might say, well, I just can't do it because I don't have as much, or I'm not like them, or they're more blessed than me, or they get a better background, or they came from this place and that place, and I didn't come from that place, or whatever. And they let it discourage them. But then there's other people that say, well, I don't have as much as them, but I got what I got, and I'm going to do something with it. So I'm just asking, which one are you? Both that 2-talent man and the 5-talent man were called good and faithful servants. Both the 2-talent man and the 5-talent man both entered into the joy of their Lord. Didn't matter what they started with. Now, did the 1-talent man do wrong in that parable? He did. Of course he did. And again, it didn't matter that he only had 1 talent. That's not what went wrong for him. He would have been just as pleasing to his master as the others had he just wisely used what he had been given. So the church needs those willing to accomplish all that they can with what the Lord has blessed them with. Look at verse 9. Let's read 9 through 12. I'm going to read about 2 of these fellows here. It says, and after him, verse 9, was Eleazar, the son of Dodo. I don't know how else to pronounce that name, so I'm going to call him Dodo. The Ahohite, one of the 3 mighty men with David when they defied the Philistines who were gathered there for battle, and the men of Israel had retreated. He arose and attacked the Philistines until his hand was weary, and his hand stuck to the sword. The Lord brought about a great victory that day, and the people returned after him only to plunder. Verse 11, and after him was Shema, the son of Agi, the Hararite. The Philistines had gathered together into a troop where there was a piece of ground full of lentils. So the people fled from the Philistines. But he stationed himself in the middle of the field, defended it, and killed the Philistines. So the Lord brought about a great victory. I think we can say about these 2 men that they were hard fighters. They were hard fighters. And doesn't the church definitely need more members who are going to fight for the truth and fight very hard for it? Yes. We're not trying to fight. We don't need more fighters to prove how better they are than other people. Because these kind of Christian fighters understand that we're all sinners, we all have our faults, and we all stumble, right? That's Romans 3 and verse 23. But we're talking about members who care about standing up for the truth at every occasion. Jesus went to the cross for us, yes? What are we willing to do in return? He fought for us. And are we going to fight for him? 1 Peter 3 and verse 15, I would imagine that we need more Christians to at least be able to do this. Always be ready to give a defense to everyone who asks you a reason for the hope that is in you with meekness and fear. So we are fighters. We're in the Lord's army. We say we are fighting a battle, but it's a spiritual one. And so we fight with our knowledge. We fight with wisdom and certainly common sense. We fight with concern because we care about people. We fight with love. And all the kind of wars that have been fought over history and that wars are going to be fought, lands and borders and money and worldly honor, all of those things are at stake in all of the worldly battles that take place. In our battle, in our war, souls are at stake. That's it. And we need to understand that our enemy, Satan, he is very relentless in his attacks. 1 Peter 5 and verse 8, and we can't afford to passively just sit back and let the world walk all over the truth of God's word. Are we passive Christians? Are we a passive congregation? We could also say about Eleazar and Shammah that they were not men who gave up easily. Notice again, verse number 9, Eleazar stayed to fight while everybody else retreated. Verse 11, Shammah put himself out in the open when people had already fled away from the enemy. Do you know how easy it is to run away when you see everybody else also running away in that direction? There are stories of accidental heroes in wartime. These are men who would have retreated and ran away with everybody else, but they got confused or they misunderstood the orders or they just got frozen in fear. And there they stood kind of by themselves and they appeared to be bravely holding the line when really they weren't doing any of that. These fellows are not, and then here in this chapter, they are not accidental heroes. And it shouldn't be us either. Sometimes the Lord needs Christians who are going to courageously run in the opposite direction that everybody else is running. When they're running away, we run toward the fight to fight the tougher battles that other people just won't fight. Is that asking too much? I think it's very easy to do what is right when you have faithful Christians around you doing the very same thing, isn't it? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm just saying that's a fact. When everyone else is just doing the right thing, it's easy for us to also do the right thing. It's easy to make a decision when you know everybody's already going to agree with you. It's easy to be a faithful child of God when you're sitting in the pews on a Sunday. That's the easy part. But true faith is how you live when nobody else is around. When others have fled the scene, so to speak. When no one is willing to do what needs to be done except you. True courage and trust in the Lord is when you make the right decision, when you know people are not going to like it. When the preacher decides to speak the truth on a particular, we might say, hot button subject. When the eldership decides to make a very tough decision. When a Christian decides to do what is right, knowing that there is going to be some backlash that comes from it. That takes courage. That's real courage right there. It takes great faith to do that. Now, the passage we read, verse 10 and 12, both of those verses say that the Lord brought about a great victory. Maybe there would not have been a victory on those days if either of those men had just given up the fight. And I think what we see is that the Lord, he looks down and he is pleased when he sees his people not giving up when the going gets tough. And when he sees that, and they're fighting, and they're trying their best, they're giving their all, he helps them. He helps them, which is a truth that perhaps in our fears we sometimes forget. Fear is a very powerful thing. And where is the victory going to be today if the Lord's church does not have members who are willing to fight the good fight? She don't have members to run where other people won't. She don't have members to stand their ground. She don't have members who refuse to give up. Where's the victory going to be for the Lord's church today if we don't have those kind of people? Look at verse 18 and 19 in 2 Samuel 23. 18 and 19 says, Now Abishai, the brother of Joab, the son of Zeruiah, was chief of another 3. He lifted a spear against 300 men, killed them, and won a name among these 3. Was he not the most honored of 3? Therefore he became their captain. However, he did not attain to the first 3. All right, so we got another great warrior, Abishai. He's no pushover. He slayed 300 men with a spear. That sounds pretty good to me. But the text says he did. He was good, but he ain't that great. Now, apparently, David had a special group of 3 men. This guy, Abishai, he wasn't one of those special guys. He was great, but he wasn't the greatest. If you think of Peter the apostle, was he great? Yeah, man, he was great. Who is it that we read giving the first gospel sermon in Acts chapter 2? That's Peter. Acts chapter 3, he's boldly preaching on Solomon's porch there in Jerusalem. And then in 4, he's preaching in front of a hostile Jewish council. He's not scared. Peter converted the first Gentiles to the church, Acts chapter 10. He wrote 2 books of the New Testament. But who was it that brought Peter to Jesus? Who was it? Was it this guy? Was it that guy right there? Andrew, John chapter 1. What do you know about Andrew? His name starts with an A and it ends with a W. That's about it. And he's Peter's brother. That's about all we know about him. But he's kind of lost to history. We don't really, but you think he was important? Who would Peter be without Andrew? He brought him to Jesus. Most might remember that it was Aaron who was holding up Moses' arms while Israel was fighting down in the valley below. Israel fighting a battle. You remember that? And then Moses, when he would lower his arms, they started losing. When he was raising his arms and the staff up, they started winning. So they needed his hands held up. And here comes Aaron, his brother. He's holding his arms up. But there was another man doing it too. Moses had 2 arms. It took 2 men to do it. Well, who was that other guy? I ain't going to tell you who he is. It's in Exodus 17, though. And you read it. Do we know who this guy is? No, not really. Kind of lost to history. We don't even know his name. Most Christians don't even know this guy's name. But was he important to God and to his people and to Moses and Aaron on that day? Well, yes, very much so. I bet some of y'all know his name. Tell me on the way out. Some of the Lord's greatest servants just go unrecognized. And there's a lot of, what makes these kind of servants great is because they really don't want the recognition, and that's the humility that exists within the body of Christ. And that's a good thing, but they do go unrecognized. And the Lord just needs members who are willing to serve Christ out of true love and respect. And they don't do it to be seen and be heard by men. I tend to think that preachers, I really hope I never get wrapped up in this. I hope I'm not there. I hope you don't think this about me. But I think preachers are very, susceptible to falling into this trap where it's all about you. It's all about them. They do it to be seen and be heard. But somebody here, when it gets springtime and the grass starts growing, somebody cuts that grass out there. And there are so many people here in this congregation who can say, well, it ain't me. Just about every one of us say, well, I'll do it. But it doesn't magically cut itself. Somebody puts juice in those cups. Do you know who does it? If you didn't see them up here doing things, would you even know? Somebody's always sending cards on the church's behalf and put their name on it. Well, who are those people? You got one of those cards? Oh, man, the church thinks of me. Well, it's really the people who are sending those cards. Who does that? Somebody is always on the phone, always talking to people, trying to keep this building up, getting stuff fixed. Who does that? Somebody cleans this building. Who does that? How often are they sincerely thanked for their efforts? Maybe a lot, and maybe that's the case. But maybe they don't get thanked enough. And maybe we're all guilty, including me. We don't thank them enough. Hopefully not because we don't even know who they are. Abishai, he does something else too. If you go back 2 chapters and you look in 2 Samuel 21 in verse number 15, look at what he does here. It says, when the Philistines were at war again with Israel, David and his servants with him went down and fought against the Philistines, and David grew faint. Then Ishbi-Benob, who was one of the sons of the giant, the weight of whose bronze spear was 300 shekels, who was bearing a new sword, thought he could kill David. But Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, came to his aid, struck the Philistine, and killed him. What did he do there? He saved the king's life. Well, but he did it. He didn't attain to the other 3, but he helped preserve the lineage through which Jesus Christ would be born. Sounds like quite the accomplishment to me. You know, God, I guess all that matters on this point is that God is going to recognize those who served in his kingdom soon enough. That day is coming. I guess that's all that matters. But until then, I think it would be good for us to search out these members of the church who do the little things and who do the kind of the things that nobody else is willing to do. And I'm not saying go out and buy them a car or something. I think a simple thank you would probably go a long ways. Let's look at one more. So we're in chapter 23, verse number 20. Look at this guy right here. It says, Benaniah was the son of Jehoiada, the son of a valiant man from Kabzeel, who had done many deeds. He had killed 2 lion-like heroes of Moab. He also had gone down and killed a lion in the midst of a pit on a snowy day. And he killed an Egyptian, a spectacular man. The Egyptian had a spear in his hand, and so he went down to him with a staff, wrested the spear out of the Egyptian's hand, and killed him with his own spear. These things Benaniah, the son of Jehoiada, did, and won a name among 3 mighty men. All right. What did he do? Well, he accomplished a very difficult task, I would say. Not only did he kill 2 lion-like Moabites, so these, ferocious-looking guys, I guess, very strong. Not only did he go up against an Egyptian with a spear, take a spear, and kill him with his own spear, but he also killed a lion. And it says that he didn't just kill a lion, he killed a lion in the midst of a pit, in the middle of a pit. And he didn't just kill a lion in the middle of the pit, he did it on a snowy day. Can you believe what you read? I was reading this again, and I was thinking, this sounds like one of those stories like an old timer might tell you about how they used to get to school or something. Oh, I had to walk 8 miles in 7 feet of snow and didn't have any shoes on and had to fight off wild raccoons, rabid raccoons all the way to school. Kind of sounds like one of those stories, don't it? I think we could say that Benaniah was a man who could accomplish very difficult things. The church needs members who are willing to take on difficult tasks, and not only just take them on, actually succeed in doing them. You know, being an elder, you know why we don't have an overflowing, we don't have a waiting list to be an elder? Because it's a difficult task. And the church needs elders. We absolutely 100% need elders. It's the way that God has organized his church. Being a deacon, where's the overflowing wait list for being a deacon? We don't have one. Because sometimes being a deacon can be a difficult task. The church absolutely 100% needs deacons. The elders need deacons to handle certain things so they can focus on shepherding the flock. I'm sure everywhere you go, any congregation you go, you're going to find somebody or a handful of people who are saying, well, the shepherds aren't shepherding. The elders aren't shepherding. Well, it's probably because maybe it's because they're doing all the work of deacons. And the same fellows who are complaining about the elders are the same fellows who haven't lived a life where they even qualify to be a deacon, much less say, hey, I'll do that. I'll step into that role. There's something right there. Being a Bible class teacher, that could be difficult at times. The church absolutely 100% needs them. Being a preacher is a difficult task. The church needs them. If you think about the apostles, what did they do? We mentioned Romans 10:18, that they had succeeded in spreading the gospel of Christ to the entire known world. How difficult do you think their task was? What if the apostles had failed in their mission? It's not always easy being a Christian. And we know that the church has always faced persecution throughout her entire existence. But if we are to accomplish the mission, and the mission is still going on, right? We still have the mission. If we're going to accomplish the mission of the Lord's church, its members are going to have to step up and take on the difficult, but oh so very rewarding task set before them. So all of these men that we mentioned, we're closing it. We're done. All of these men that we mentioned had this in common. They were all faithful soldiers who fought wholeheartedly for their king. You can make the application yourself, right? Christ fought for your salvation. The least thing we can do for him is fight for his cause with everything that we have. The church today needs these kinds of people. And don't forget, maybe these kinds of people used to be here, now they're not. We need to get them back. But I want to ask you this evening, which role are you prepared to fill? I bet you can do one, if not many. I bet you can do it. I think you got it deep down in you. So what say you? The invitation is open. You need to respond to it. Folks, don't waste your talents. Don't tell me you don't have any talents. I won't believe you. I will make one up for you. That's how much I believe you have talent. Don't waste your talents. Don't let opportunities slip by. Don't neglect the work of the church. Let's be busy Christians so we can be successful Christians. Let's grab our songbooks and stand and sing.